Hey, Peter.
Hello.
It's been a while we worked together, but anyway, I see you quite often, so it's good.
Yes.
So, yeah, so maybe we start a channel and I do the role. First, let's introduce yourself, right? I mean, it's a very small channel for now, but you never know who's going to watch it. So, why don't you introduce yourself and then I'll talk a little bit about Take Two, the channel.
A tech professional of almost 30 years, over the past 20, primarily focused on technology strategy, the crafting of it, the implementation of it, and very much in the space of looking forward of how technology might help people do our jobs better, more effectively, more efficiently, um, get ahead, basically,
So
win
you,
the game.
so you still consider yourself to be a technologist, right? I mean, that would
Absolutely.
be yeah. And
Absolutely.
I know the last few gigs that you had fairly technical.
Yeah.
And maybe just allude to them a little bit. Like what's your uh, what are the stuff you're doing, technically speaking.
So technically speaking, my area of expertise is in enterprise architecture and the technical part of enterprise architecture, not so much the business side of enterprise architecture. And I've been in a mining
Yeah, that's a big one.
environment.
The
I've
largest, one of
been,
the largest, if not the
yes,
largest. Yeah.
yes, mining companies in the world. Worked in a services company,
Yeah.
primarily in finance, corporate finance services, HR
That's an yeah.
services, and corporate secretarial services. And then spent a couple of years in a big telco.
Again, one of the largest in the region. Yeah.
Yes, and very much in the space of looking at transformation in order for the industry to keep up with the sort of changes in the
Yeah.
industry.
Okay, cool. And we will spend a bit of time on the corporate because that's where we kind of spend a lot of
Right.
time on. Maybe we start with this, right? Some big picture questions first. Just how do you see the world changing, technically speaking, right? And what are the key mega trends in your mind that are impacting technologies? I'm interested in the career of many technologists out there in Singapore specifically, but not necessarily just Singapore, but technology as a whole. And I see that their life is going to change, the way technology is delivered and the way technology is being. And there are certain mega trend that is impacting at full on like Titanic. You just can't change it. So maybe tell us some of your thoughts around that.
I mean, clearly, a mega trend in technology is AI.
Yeah, okay, that's a big one.
And in a lot of ways, you could think of, if I were to create an analogy, if I were to use the analogy, let's just say, for instance, I was in the furniture business. Okay. How many people in the furniture business know anything about building furniture? I'd say very, 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 very,
Very,
very few.
very few. Yeah.
And I think that's where technology is heading. There could be lots of us who claim to be in the technology business who don't know much about the underlying technology, if you will. And so I think as far as skill sets are concerned, it's really evolving to more and more about what do you do with it? What can you do with it? Then how do you build it? In the same way that I think about furniture, it's less about how do you build furniture,
Yeah.
it's much more about what do you do with it? What are the aesthetics of furniture?
That's a deep
Where
thought.
is it placed? Whether it's at home, in a lounge, in a hotel,
Yeah.
at an airport. You think of furniture not so much in how it is made,
Yeah.
but the expression of it.
Yeah. Okay. It's actually a very deep thought that you just threw out there. So I'm gonna chew on it a little bit. I would say that it's very easy to learn a certain language, let's say C, C++, there's only 32 syntax or whatever it is that you right? But then you think, oh, technology is about constructing something with this code and syntax. But what you're saying is no, actually, we've been building stuff with it and we built applications, we built complex modules and so on. Now it's about the application or usage of these stuff, right? That's what you're saying. And that
Yeah.
is a complete different set of skills. You know how to sit on a chair, but you don't know how to construct the chair, right? But at the macro level, it is so important to know how to design chairs in a room.
Yes,
It's so important to design a chair in a function like in a surgical operating theater,
absolutely.
blah 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 blah, dental chair and whatever, right? So we are so taken in with the building and constructing of the technology, i.e., the building of a chair.
Yeah,
But what I think you're trying to insinuate, maybe I'm right or wrong, I'm not sure, is that we really need to think a little bit about usage of the piece of furniture we built,
yes,
i.e., the technology that we have. How do you actually maximize it for human potential or whatever, right?
absolutely
Okay,
correct.
am I okay? Good.
Yes. Just recently, I think everybody's probably heard this from Jensen Huang, the leader of NVIDIA.
Yep.
And he said, stop telling your kids to learn programming.
Yeah.
There's no need for it
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, today, as I mentioned at the beginning, mega trend being AI,
That's a scary
technology will
thought.
create technology.
That's a scary thought. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we don't need to learn to code. That's a pretty structured process. The one that is not so structured is what do you do with all this technology? How does that really improve humanity?
Yeah. Very deep thought. Anyway, we will explore that a little bit. So, okay, maybe that's so let me just take a slightly different personal question. What do you do to continue to develop yourself and continue to grow as a technologist? What are the things that sort of that you are still inspiring yourself and so on?
Because I guess I come from a technology background, I find my gap to be in the space of quote unquote business,
Yeah,
meaning
yeah.
what do
Domain.
you do with all this technology? And there's just so much of domains
Yeah.
of knowledge in which we can apply technology. Again, whether it's building a furniture business, or I mean, how do you apply technology to just everyday things like better refrigerators,
Yeah.
home appliances as an example. How do we use technology to be better at cleaning pools or cleaning homes, cleaning the air,
Yeah.
etc. This the domain. So I find that now that I mean, because I come from a technology background, I understand technology.
Yeah.
Then it's really about solving real human
Okay,
problems
I like that. It's more
with all of
practical.
that, yeah,
Okay.
and understanding because it's not just about solving the problem. How do you solve it economically? How do you solve it in a way that appeals to humans? How do you
The
solve the
aesthetics or
problem?
the
Yeah, sure.
yeah,
So that a person
the
will want to use
pleasantries
it.
of
Yeah.
technology. Yeah.
So it's
Sounds like
about
Apple, but at least
yeah,
that's what
yes.
Apple's trying to do.
And that's the beginning, isn't it? To me, it's will people use it? Will people enjoy using it? Because the
Yeah.
more they enjoy using it, the greater the value of it, the more we're willing to pay money for it, the more there's a business for it, the more we could actually create it and sustain it.
So okay, if I were to try to answer the question I threw at you, and you're still looking at understanding human nature, human living, human businesses structure, so that you can then think about application of technology.
Yes,
Sounds like right? Okay.
human needs, right?
Human needs.
And
Yeah.
because all this advance in technology allows us to apply technology to more and more areas of our lives.
Okay.
Things that were not practical a couple of years ago, today suddenly
It's easy to do.
becomes practical.
Yeah.
And so, it's about keeping up with not just the technology, but how that opens up avenues of opportunity for humanity.
Let me segue a little bit, and then we'll come back to the main thread.
Yeah.
Um, I've always said that the Chinese general of old, they practice four arts. There's a spiritual side, there is a physical side, that means their kung fu and their archery and their horse riding, all that. There is a mental side where they read the classic, the Sun Tzu Art of War and all the poem and all the rest of it. There's one more, they practice calligraphy. And it is for mindfulness, but it's more than that. It's actually for aesthetics. It's for an appreciation for beauty and simplicity. I think today most of our organization are ugly like whatever. because our leaders just don't practice aesthetics. And aesthetics, I don't mean just sketching or calligraphy. I mean, you can do many things to practice, aesthetics, photography, cooking, presentation of your food, crochet, like knitting, whatever, right? But there is no such appreciation for among many of our leaders. They focus on physical body activities. They focus on mental. Sure, they are MBAs and executive coaching and whatnot, but aesthetics, it's frowned on or not even considered. So many of the organizations we build are very, very ugly.
Many, I would agree, many, but I would argue that the most admired and
Company,
successful companies and leaders, they have a great appreciation
sure,
for aesthetics, for beauty
yeah,
that goes far beyond. It goes beyond just visual, if you
yeah,
will. Elegance can be expressed in so many different
yeah,
ways, and I would suggest that a superior processor has incredible elegance
sure,
built into it,
sure.
and
But one could certainly use a simple chip to do elegant thing. Sometimes that could be the beauty in itself,
simplicity is
right?
incredibly beautiful,
Uh,
right? I mean, you could appreciate buildings that is just nothing but gray concrete,
mm,
but oh my goodness, when done correctly,
yeah. Well,
it
that's how.
is beautiful.
Yeah, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Leonardo da Vinci, 600
Yes,
years ago, right? So that's what he said.
yes,
I mean, he's an architect. So,
yes.
okay, cool. Let's go back to our segue to what I actually wanted to talk to you about, and that's the building of this product that we both, I will name it, right? It's Vision. It's still running out there with plenty of users and so on. I think I want to talk about, and maybe it's a bit of a reminiscing of that moment when we were developing from conceptual and so on. Board vision is just for the benefits of the audience. It's a set of processes that's encapsulated into a platform that basically serves company secretaries, chairmen, directors, and it's a digitalization of the processes that basically make a board process more efficient, right? Maybe in your own words, how would you describe it? I mean, that's kind of how we would describe it.
We set out to transform the boardroom,
Yeah.
to digitalize the boardroom, and a big part of it was certainly efficiency
Mm.
from the point of the people who are doing the work, the corporate secretaries,
Yeah.
included the people who are providing the content, which included senior management, finance, HR people, risk people, etc., etc. To be able to present or to provide this information and make it readily available to the board in order for the board to make the correct decisions. And also to improve sort of how board of directors
Mm.
interact with key stakeholders in the organization in an incredibly secure manner.
Yeah. That's important. The security was
The
very,
security was
yeah, it
important,
was
and
important there.
recognizing that today board directors are everywhere.
Yeah.
They are not located in a
And
single
sometimes they're not
place.
even given the emails of the organization,
Yes,
right? Where to deal with that
frequently
too.
not, right? And
And they don't
so,
want it because they don't want to deal with their Gmail, right? Yeah,
well, I
or
mean,
personal mail.
ask most, maybe not most, but many board directors are on multiple
Yeah.
boards. And ask any board director that is on multiple boards if they would like to have all of those various
Yeah.
emails. I think
It's
the answer is clearly
no.
no. They just want one place to go to pick
Yeah.
up all the materials that's relevant to them. So I think that those, creating those processes in a
Mm.
more efficient manner for the board directors, very important people,
Yeah.
was a very key objective of the product. And as we mentioned, security being another one.
Yeah.
There's still plenty of organizations, even in this day and age, that carry around physical paper.
Yeah.
And that's,
Incredible. I mean, to think about that.
yes. And we all know that that's both environmentally unacceptable, nor
and
security,
not secure. Exactly.
not from a security standpoint.
Um, I guess maybe the question should be, what are you most proud of when you think about Board Vision? What 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 are the moments or things that we've done that you're most proud of?
I can name a whole bunch. I think
Just name a couple.
the top couple, first that comes to mind is how we reimagined
Mm,
board processes. It's not like there weren't competitor products,
yeah,
but we went above and beyond competitor products to envision something different,
yeah,
something better. And it wasn't necessarily even done with people who had done this before.
yeah,
Although we gained tremendous input from domain experts, corporate secretaries, and such who's done this,
yeah.
we also involved a lot of techies
Mm-hmm.
who have never done this before, have
Yep,
never been familiar even with word processes and
yep.
such, uh, to imagine something that we thought would, quote unquote, change the little world that we
Yeah.
were trying to change.
Actually, it ties into your earlier point about making the world a better place, right? Because in the case of Board Vision, what we did was we actually put some of the best corporate secretaries in the room,
Yes,
very experienced, retired,
yes,
right?
yes.
Advisors, and we squeezed the juice out of them, so to speak, in terms of some of the design. I mean, it was incredible that we could think about things that are,
And it was a very collaborative process
mhm.
because, as I remembered it, people who are used to doing a certain thing would always prefer to do that a certain
Yeah, they
thing
won't want
in
to
a
change. Yeah.
certain way. But once we introduced digitalization, we start to recognize you could skip 5 of these steps and get to the outcome.
Yeah.
Then why would you want to take those 5 steps
Yeah.
anyways?
Yeah.
And so that would became a collaborative approach between domain experts and
Mm.
technologies who say, well, actually, we don't need to do this. We can just go from A to F without having to go through B, C, D, E.
Well, the interesting thing is that it was a painful process.
It was. It
We had
was. But
I had to deal with complaints. Oh, Peter's not listening about our points, and your tech guys is not like, oh, I have to deal with all that, right? So
and
yeah,
that
they're
is,
good memories actually.
which brings me to the point too. I think something I know, techies we struggle a lot with is that we're primarily in the space of change. We're
Yeah,
always changing how
comfortable
things
with
are
it, right?
done. And one of the very, 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 very important skills we dramatically need is to always think about managing that change,
Yeah,
especially for um, users who are very much sort of used to one way. Now,
never change.
yeah, and there is a
Yeah.
big, big difference too between, say, consumer products,
Mm.
right, and products that are primarily targeted to office workers. The certainly that environment is not quite as conducive to
Mm.
change as
Yeah.
just the commercial public, um, where we crave new. In a corporate environment, new is not craved.
Yeah. It's a necessity.
Yeah.
But having said that, I would say that the world is changing faster, spinning faster.
Yes. Yes.
So it will impact everybody, techie or not,
Correct.
right? So
And
that's
so, yeah, and so it really is fundamental to every one of us who work to be able to not just keep up with the change, but hopefully get ahead of the
yeah,
change.
yeah,
You and I both know we live in Singapore. It's an incredibly advanced, modern place. But even in such a place where, probably one of the most highly educated population of any country in the world, we still see a lot of people finding it
mm,
difficult to keep up with change,
yeah,
finding it difficult to sort of find their place in this very, very fast-paced world. And I absolutely agree that that pace is not going to slow down. It will only accelerate. And so our ability not just to change, but to get ahead of that
yeah.
change is so much more important.
We're coming to a very interesting time. All right, so let's talk about some of the good and bad that you think of the development of board vision, right? I guess it's a bit of a reminiscing of the project itself or the product. Good, bad, in your mind, what were the highlights? Um,
Um,
for the record, so that we can, look at back at this someday. We can talk about it.
yeah, I think the good clearly is that we created something new.
Yeah,
And we were able to create that something new. The good, for example, was us taking the decision to carve out a separate team who
yeah,
is less encumbered
split out.
by existing sort of constraints and such, provided that space for creativity, provided that space for non-traditional
Yeah.
ways of doing things. That
Mm.
was very good, very important. And even hiring people who don't necessarily have the burden
Yeah.
of past. I think that was
But
very
all the
positive.
time have people who are very experienced in the domain
Yes,
be a
correct.
part of that
Yes, and that
input, and yeah.
collaboration, that input was indeed incredibly
It has its
valuable.
challenges because one, you have to deal with uh generation difference,
Mm,
right? The other one is the communication style is just so different, and we had so many outbursts that we had to deal with, right? In the beginning, it got better towards the end. I mean,
yeah.
we spent what, 3 years, almost 2.5, 3 years,
Mm,
but the beginning was very rough because the mindset and the culture, and they were just not aligned.
yeah.
But I think it was just a normal process, and I think
Sure.
in any technology implementation, it's applicable to most application. Well, applicable to all technology implementation. That is, if you want someone with deep domain, there will be a certain set of culture, and if you want someone who knows how to build technology to bring the change in, there's a certain set of culture. And you try to put them all in the same team, and that same experience that you and I had with this startup team, yeah, it will be the same.
It'll be challenging.
It'll be,
It'll
yeah.
always be challenging. Um, but but I also think that it is part of the formula for success. I
Mm,
think if we didn't have our COSEC experts with us,
yeah.
it
We
would
wouldn't
have
have
been
built the
even
right product.
harder.
It
Yeah,
would have been a techie product that's not applicable to the.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like what you say, the function of the chair or function of the technology won't be appreciated because it's not useful to them. For them, we'll be thinking, oh, the bells and whistle, right?
yes,
We want video conferencing. Well, actually, video conferencing was very low on the priority. The
yes,
other stuff like chairman, and all the other stuff on chat to take away from WhatsApp and from email was a lot
yes,
more important than video
yes,
conferencing, for example,
yes.
right?
Or even when we started to figure out that it's a necessity, like it or
Mm,
not, even though, for instance, we created a product that will allow our directors to move from one company context to another company context to another company context.
yeah,
That's great. But then remembering that we still need to be able to provide the director a full human perspective
mm,
across all those individual contexts is not good enough
yeah,
that they're able to move from one to another, but to actually have the sort of bird's eye view across everything
yeah. The
that they are.
dashboards, yeah,
Yes, that's across multiple companies and such.
yeah.
And so it goes back always to who is the user and what
Mm-hmm.
is that experience of that user. Just as we mentioned, not all cheers are created equal,
Yeah,
right? It very much depends on how that chair is meant to be used in what
yeah,
context. And so I think those were very important learning points
yeah. Okay,
in
that's good.
creating that product.
If we were start board vision all over again, anything you would do differently?
Um, yes, I think one of the things that I would do differently is
Tech or people?
people.
Mm,
It'll be people. I think would be to spend some upfront time investing upfront time with these domain experts
mm,
uh, in envisioning, really helping these experts
mm,
think differently about how they would do their jobs.
Maybe I dissect that a little bit. I think the problem with deep domain expert sort of folks, right? They have a set way. They have been doing it for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever.
Yes.
And they have, when they want to do certain things, they think it has to be done that way. The trouble is they try to be technical designers as well.
Yes.
So they skip ahead and think that
Yes.
they understand technology.
Yes.
And I mean, it's not their fault, but they think, oh, that's how technology should work. But as we know, technology change way faster than that. So it could have other, techniques to deliver the service. But because they jump and they tell you this is what they want, when they have incorporated technical design, right? So I think the problem is how do we distill or change or separate the domain stuff from the technical design part, right?
I think
That's a tough one.
it is difficult, but I think even more difficult than that is look at the methodologies are in place, right? I mean, you could walk somebody through, all right, let's go through a whole design thinking process. The process is there. The problem is less about the process. It always comes down to the person or the people involved. How do we help people be unencumbered by what they have known to really think afresh, to think from start? Right? Whether it's encumbered by existing processes or encumbered by existing technologies or encumbered by a link between those two things. It's always, if we were to start from scratch, and that's a really, really difficult place to start.
Yeah.
We often talk about the need for creativity,
Yeah.
right?
I'm a
And
firm believer of that.
yes. And that's a very, very difficult place to start.
Yeah.
A blank sheet of paper is a very, very difficult place to start. But I think it's partially where we need to start in
Yeah.
order for us to really re-envision something.
Well, the artist, the 2 points that are most difficult for someone who's trying to draw for the artist, the first hardest place is how to start. The
Yes.
second hardest is how to stop.
Yeah.
But
Very,
so
very
you keep
true.
going and then you destroy it, and
Yes.
I went way past, right? So, but anyway, technology doesn't have that part because technology continues to evolve. But the starting point is almost the same. So what the artists do is they do thumbnails, they do sketches, they do pilots in a way, like doing little doodles, just to help visualize how the end product's gonna look like. We're not very good at that because our ability to visualize and our ability to project into the future is very limited by our own sort of constraints. And the more a domain expert that you are, the more constrained or
Yes.
the more harder the grip of your past is on you.
Yes. Yes.
So therefore, to create something in the future, and you get domain experts, so you can recognize that's their weakness. But the strength is they bring all the domain that comes with it, right? I mean, there's certain phases as I'm describing this, I'm thinking about them. And so, I'm thinking, how do I then inject some orientation, some training, so that before I put them into the project, that I make them realize that they have to check certain stuff at the door before they go into a design thinking experience
Yes. Yes.
workshop.
Yes.
And so those will be really helpful, right?
Yes.
Because then you orientate them that, look, it's about the future, it's not the past. What you bring is your domain, but don't restrict. Now, these are very generic. I think we need a little bit more specific instruction and maybe some orientation for them before they get into it.
And I want to extend beyond these domain experts. And this is very context specific. For us, it was the context of the company that we
Yeah.
worked in. Depending on the context, I also think that this process of envisioning needed participation from decision makers who will ultimately need to fund this investment.
Well, that's always a tough one, right?
That's a very, very tough one.
Yeah.
Because I think it really needed for them to have a better understanding. Because I think some of them had an understanding, some of them didn't.
Yeah.
Some of them were caught surprised.
Yeah.
Some pleasantly, some not so pleasantly.
Yeah.
And I think really we forget that we need to bring them along the journey just as early on as everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, look, I remember when we were discussing it that this thing could potentially take over the world, right? Take on the couple of American platforms that's
Yes.
dominating the scene.
Yes.
Anyway, really good.
But another good outcome. I mean, you may or may not know about this, but I recently heard feedback from somebody
Hmm.
that they love the product.
Yeah, it was the same. I heard something as well. But this is
Yes.
about 3 years too late for us.
Yes. And I
Well,
think that's the part. We didn't have the runway per se.
yeah, we did. Yeah.
If the organization had survived longer
Yeah.
than where
Well,
it
the change
was.
of the board and so on all didn't help,
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
of course
Yeah.
the fact that the company was disrupted by being chopped and sold and
That's
what
right.
all rest
Yeah.
of it.
For
So
other
anyway,
reasons.
those are all sort of boardroom dealings
That's
that
right.
impacted the boardroom software that we're building.
Yes.
But nevertheless, it was. I think there are more than 2,000 or 3,000 directors on it at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. They broke even, I believe.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, we don't really know the details since we are out of the company for more than 2 years, but it's doing reasonably okay from what I heard. So and people are using it in
Yes,
earnest.
and the
So
users are
yeah,
still providing positive feedback
yeah,
about that experience,
yeah.
and I think it takes time. I think these sorts of changes
That's the lesson
takes
itself.
yeah.
Actually, that's the lesson itself.
Yes.
Time is all. All techies wants to run and deliver the final product in 2 sprint, right?
Yes.
We know it's not possible when you get the. It's just not possible, and you need
Yeah.
time to get it.
Yes.
And yeah,
Yes. I mean, we may have no choice but to deliver an MVP in
mm,
a month or two or whatever it is.
yeah,
Run these short sprints to deliver that MVP. That's a requirement, like it or not.
yeah,
But I think we all have learned that your MVP, or even your version one or your
mm,
version two, is exactly what it is.
yeah,
Version 1, version 2. And maybe it won't be until version 10 before it finally gets to a point that
mm,
this is great
yeah,
product.
and
And if
yeah,
we don't allow ourselves the time to get to version 10,
mm,
then it'll always be
yeah,
half baked,
half
quarter
baked. Yeah,
baked, and such,
that's right.
right? We haven't gotten there.
Actually, we got. But by the time you and I left, we had what 7, 8 iterations releases.
But those are releases,
Yeah.
and you could have as many releases as you want, but I don't think um, uh, I wouldn't call it sort of major
Mm-hmm.
versions. We may have had two major versions,
Right.
but not quite sort of the
Yeah, not quite like 10
yeah,
version release.
yes,
It would have
yes,
really gotten to somewhere.
yes. We had so
But yeah,
much in the backlog that we could have worked on,
yeah,
right? It's
um,
we just
yeah.
didn't get there.
One point, and I think you can throw it back at me too. Is the idea that in itself is a systemic view of the whole setup. There's a product, there's a team, right? And Elon Musk, in one of his internet interview, he says, Don't be so, um, taken in by the rockets. It's the factory that you should be amazed, because the factory builds a rocket. The rockets can explode. One, two, three, four, five. Finally, a fifth one will land straight and reusable. Um, but the factory that builds it is the amazing stuff. So in the same way, I felt that the team that built, the squads that we had was incredible. I think we had sort of stars aligned. Many organizations tried for 1 2 years and nothing comes out of it. But we had a product that was actually used by some of the biggest boards in Singapore, right? So it was quite something. So I guess my point I'm trying to make is that if you ask me, one of the things that I was really proud of was the team that came together, despite the difficulty in the beginning, that built this thing and have it run production.
Mm.
And I guess we had it in production for more than a year before we left.
Mm.
So that
Oh,
was
more than that, more
more than
than
that.
that,
Yeah.
way more,
So
well more than that.
so I mean that the product itself, yes, but the people, many of
Yes.
them are doing great stuff today, right? So what are your thoughts about the team that we had?
Wonderful. In fact, we didn't exactly have a
Full squad, full team.
or full squad, or for that matter, all the money we ever needed,
Yeah,
right,
well,
to
we,
do
we're
the
always
job,
short.
right? Yeah, we were always
Yeah, we're
short,
always trying to cut costs, right?
and
Yeah.
if you remember, we couldn't afford to hire top talent.
Yeah, we
In
couldn't get our
fa-
iOS guy for a long time.
no, yeah,
Yeah,
we had to make do with basically whoever we could find on
yeah,
the street that was available. And for us to achieve, I think what we did,
yeah. It was quite
given
incredible.
sort of the ragtag team that we put together, I think that
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
huge accomplishment.
No,
I think the other part of the accomplishment is not that just that we did it once.
yeah,
We were able to keep it going. It
yeah,
became a product team where we're constantly
yeah.
evolving
Mm,
the product. So that is when I think I became convinced that this was a working
yeah.
model, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah, we
not.
were kind of had our own skepticism in the beginning, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
it
But
was no longer just a
yeah,
project. It now was something that we knew had a
yeah,
life of its own that we could keep
yeah.
iterating, keep evolving, and keep improving. And I think that's when it. And we did some quite I consider to be rather novel things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for example, again, I think a lot of this is just stemmed from a lack of resources,
Yeah,
right? We didn't have testers, remember?
yeah,
We couldn't afford to hire a lot of testers. What did we end up doing? We ended up combining our customer service team as our testers,
yeah.
just so that they had firsthand understanding of what the
Of the
system
product.
can and cannot do. And so anybody who calls and says, I can't do this, or the system's not
They
working,
knew
or
exactly
whatever,
how
they
to
knew
help them. Yeah,
exactly what the problems were and how to help.
yeah, yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and those I think were
In,
some of the best innovation from lack of resources.
All right, so let's bring back just to conclude our conversation. Bring back to technology, right? I mean, we started talking about the mega trends, and what do you think would be the most important thing for an IT professional today? Assuming that he has a job, he's any of those roles, right? An architect, an agile PM, whatever. What's your advice for them in terms of career development? I mean, that's a very generic statement. So that they can be relevant for the next, years, right, to come.
Yeah, I think I think we will always have people who are going to be in the wood workshop actually building the chairs.
Mm-hmm.
Those skills will always be there.
Yep.
I think though that's going to be more and more of a novelty.
Yeah. Well, as it's automated, fewer people are going to be there.
Exactly,
Yeah, sure. That's
exactly.
understood.
And so, for the rest of the folks, I think there desperately needs an appreciation for other disciplines outside of technology, such as um, just being able to understand the business case
Mm,
of a particular technology
mm,
product. That's super important.
yeah.
Or for that matter, user experience.
Yep.
I was just today coaching a developer about, well, when you hit the OK button to delete, shouldn't there be a confirmation,
Yeah.
right?
Some feedback.
Some feedback,
Mm,
because this is a delete of a, let's say, user right.
yeah.
I mean, does this really needs to be
Yeah.
written down as a requirement somewhere,
Mm.
right? And so these are the sort of things that, anybody who's working with technology, come
It's a
on,
bit of a common sense, but
it's a bit of
not so
common
common.
sense,
Yeah.
but not so common sense. But just think about, the
Mm,
user experience. Think about the people who are using this
yeah.
technology. Think for them, build for them.
Yeah.
So understanding that stakeholder map, right? The people using the technology, people paying for the
Yeah.
technology, right, and such. It's that to have a greater appreciation for those other
Yeah.
disciplines. I think
Well,
is a
you're
really
talking
important
about
part.
having multidisciplinary approach
Yes.
to building tech, because it's not standalone anymore. As technology become pervasive, they interact with each other, and so someone who's designing one piece of tech needs to consider all the other domains. So domains are a little bit more broad based, I
Yeah.
think, as we move forward, because they're
Yes.
more generic now in that
Yes.
sense, right?
Yes.
And yeah, but it's an exciting world. I think, since Kasparov lost to the AI chess program. He's been an advocate of, he started a competition where a grandmaster will bring their AI and to compete with each other. I suspect it's a bit boring because all the games will end up in draw, but not very exciting. I mean, but in the real life scenario where it is a lot more complicated than chess, the play out, if you use the wrong AI or you have the wrong grandmaster in the helm, the results could be either catastrophic or you become a superstar, right? And yeah, so
Let me pick up on that. You know, the wrong AI. I
mhm,
think that's such a that's an important distinction there, right? Not all LLMs are
yeah,
created equal. Not all AI ML engines are created equal.
exactly.
There's incredible opportunity to build very purpose specific
Yeah,
kinds of
that's
AIs and AS
that's
engines and
that. I
such.
think we are now beginning coming to a point that people appreciates the distinction
Yes.
between the fact that LLM is not representing the whole world. It cannot because it's just too
Yes.
much. And so therefore, yeah, you kind of need to use the right tool for the right game,
Yes.
and to be able to that. Yeah. So on that note, any last word of wisdom? If not, then I think yeah, last word of wisdom.
Get ahead of the change.
Get
We
ahead.
all need to get ahead of the change and think ahead.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Peter. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I
As
hope
always.
the rest enjoy the conversation as well.
Hope so.
Bye.